What you're looking at here is a 1987 Suzuki Samurai, and this car perfectly represents why it sucks that Suzuki left the United States. Now in this video we're going to go over all the really cool reasons why the Suzuki was so important and so influential to US consumers, and by the end we'll hope you agree that Suzuki should make a comeback to the United States with their latest and greatest 4x4 off-road machine. Now perhaps the biggest reason it sucks that Suzuki left the United States is because they built interesting vehicles and then they actually imported them here to the US, and this is perhaps one of the best examples, the Suzuki Samurai. Now, the Suzuki Samurai, or as it's known in Japan, the Suzuki Jimny, was first introduced in the early 1970s as a K car, which is a class of vehicles sold in Japan with very small output engines and very small footprints to meet regulation and the tiny roads they have throughout that country. Now, the second generation Samurai would have initially come equipped with right around a 543cc engine when it was sold new in Japan. And for some reason, Suzuki thought it'd be a good idea to actually import these vehicles in bulk here to the United States, where we have massive, never-ending highways. And this thing is tiny. Now, in order to better fit American taste, they shoehorned a massive engine under the hood. It is a 1300cc four-cylinder, a 1.3 liter four-cylinder that develops a whopping 63 horsepower, and that means it's pretty slow. Now, the whole result of this K-car legislation means that when you park the Samurai next to the most popular, best-selling vehicle sold in the United States right now, the Ford F-150, it looks absolutely minuscule. The F-150 dwarfs it in just about every dimension. The Samurai here is only 60 inches wide, about the width of many side-by-side UTVs. It's only 135 inches long. This thing is tiny, but surprisingly, it has a ton of room on the inside. Now, you certainly wouldn't want to get into any sort of collision with the Samurai because these doors are paper thin. In fact, I've heard stories of people that have locked themselves out of their Samurais and in frustration have pulled the door handles so hard that either the door handle rips off or the actual door frame bends. So not a lot of structural rigidity there with these doors, but amazingly, on the interior here, I have plenty of legroom. I have plenty of headroom, and that's because this little car is a packaging marvel. It is so well designed. Even though this Suzuki may be only suited to fit you and maybe a toaster oven, it still looks like a normal car. It's got great proportions. It's nice and chunky. It's very purposeful in its overall design. I love the clamshell hood. It's much like a Wrangler, but unlike a 1987 Wrangler, the Suzuki has round headlights as God intended for off-roaders. It also has this adorable little bull bar up front. This, I believe, was a dealer option, and it is absolutely thin, but it really sets off the whole front end of the vehicle. We also have real steel bumpers. That's right, steel bumpers front and rear. We have fender flares and these little vents on the side while they're functional. What is nice though is how the hood opens. With these exposed hinges, I can pop it open, which is weirdly done through the glove box. Keep in mind, this was intended to be a right-hand drive vehicle. If I pop it open like so, come on, there we go. Undo the latch up front here, can be folded all the way back. Very similar to other Jeeps of the era, but it gives us access to the beating heart, this 1.3 liter four-cylinder. Now, early ones like this ones have a 2-barrel carburetor, so nothing too fancy here. But what's amazing is even 140-some thousand miles later, this thing starts first try every time. Not second try, not a couple cranks and then it'll start. First try every time this thing starts. It's amazing. I don't think it's been rebuilt. It looks incredibly original, but let me show you what I mean. The engine right now is bone cold. Nothing has any heat in it, and I can just get in and first try. That's it. This car has been sitting here for like 4 days straight. Didn't even care. I'll try it one more time. Now granted, of course there are thousands and thousands of other carbureted vehicles that'll start on the first try like that, but it just goes to show just how well made these Samurais are. This is a pretty tired example, and yes, it's got quite a bit of rust in the rockers and on the windshields, and it's seen a lot of its life sitting outdoors, but everything works. The lights work, the horn works, the hazards work, the radio works. It's just basic and well made. It's an easy equation, and yet so many manufacturers got it wrong, especially in this era. I love Jeeps, I love YJs, but let's be real, especially some of the early YJs weren't that well made. They still had some AMC era quality problems. And simplicity is really the name of the game here, and that's what makes these absolutely so fun to tinker with and work on. Parts are easy to get. You can see, to pull this mirror off, for example, there's this little cap that just folds down. 3 screws, whole mirror came off. My dad and I took this off to paint it. No problem. Of course it's manually adjustable, but do you really need anything more, especially on an affordable off-roader like this? There is more clever engineering back here at the rear of the Samurai. You see, Jeeps will typically have their lights mounted right here to the body. Now what that means is the rear gate can only be so wide. It can only swing so wide. Now Suzuki mounted their tail lights and turn signals and brake lights down here on the bumper, which means that the tailgate extends the entire length of the vehicle, which means it's a lot wider and you can put more stuff in the back. Now the top is a little bit unconventional. This is a best top, but the original would have operated the same. You've got a series of snaps here, so you do all the snaps, one more here, and then you got some zippers. Then we have some more straps here, which hold the roof to the tailgate like that, and then like that, and the lockable swing gate can open like that, and it's super light, and look how wide that opening is. Now once you're back here, you notice some other quirks. First off, it's just a little hole with a rod, but you know, in the pursuit of simplicity, why not? Now of course you and your toaster oven are not going to fit back here with the rear seat up, but Suzuki thought of this in a brilliant way. You see, I just pull these 2 levers, one on each side, that folds. I've got one more big one here in the middle, and the whole seat folds up, but more importantly, it locks into place at the bulkhead. Now, my Wrangler does this too. The seat will fold and tumble, but it won't lock. My Wrangler JK doesn't have a locking mechanism, which means you can't drive around with the rear seat tumbled. You have to pull it out. The Suzuki allows you to fold and tumble it, and then you have a ton of room. Just all sorts of room back here. Really, really simple but good engineering. Now, I can unfold this by simply folding back the mechanism. That folds up, and you notice some other weird things. You have lap belts in the rear, and they extend from these retractors built into the floor. Also, you have the cutest, smallest spare tire you'll ever see. They're absolutely tiny, but it does its job. I mean, do you need a bigger tire? This car is all about the question, what do you really need? What do you really need when you go off-road? Well, what you need is a Suzuki Samurai. Now let's stop and park on this whole off-roadability thing for a second, because yes, it's tiny. Yes, it's adorable. And yes, it looks like it probably wouldn't make it up your driveway, let alone any sort of dirt trail. But the Suzuki Samurai was purpose-built with off-roading in mind. You see, underneath this puny little body lies a rigid ladder frame. This is a body-on-frame vehicle. It rides on simple and durable leaf springs. Front and rear, this car has solid axles, which means it can articulate well off-road, and it's easy to fix. It's going to be reliable. Furthermore, if you look underneath, it's got skid plates. The smallest, tiniest little skid plates you'll ever see, but they're still there for protection. It also has a proper transfer case with a real low range, which amplifies every bit of torque of this tiny engine to get you over just about anything. One way you can tell this was absolutely built with off-roading in mind is the recovery points. We have tow hooks front and rear. This Samurai is a monster off-road, and there's one secret weapon we haven't considered: the weight. Weight is an enemy of off-roading. It makes it harder to get up stuff. It makes it too fast to go down stuff. The Samurai weighs 2,059 pounds. A point I will make right now with my wimpy little self, just pushing it along. 2 fingers. Yeah, It doesn't weigh anything. And that's exactly what you want in all sorts of off-road terrain. Snow, mud, sand, whatever it may be, the Samurai is going to get you there, even on these adorable little white 15-inch wheels. In order to keep these shopping cart wheels from flinging rocks everywhere, Suzuki has fitted these massive mud flaps, which is pretty cool. And take a look at that weird and wacky exhaust pipe. It makes this crazy bend and then comes out right on the left side. This one also has a hitch, and Suzuki says you can tow light trailers with this car, but they have to be really, really light trailers, I imagine. Moving on to the interior, you start to notice some really interesting things that are a little bit funny in design. Take, for example, these door locks. They're itty bitty. I mean, the handle itself is only about the size of my index finger, and the lock itself is this funny little protrusion. Now, to lock the vehicle from the outside, what you have to do is first lock it on the inside and then close it with the door handle up. So what this does essentially is it prevents you from locking yourself out of the vehicle if you accidentally lock it when you didn't mean to and slam the door. Really smart engineering, pretty common for back in the day, but it's good thinking. Other things you notice is, well, everything's a little bit plasticky, but it's held up really well over the past, 31 years. You have one knob on the entire left side of the steering wheel that controls the brightness of your gauge cluster when the lights are on. And then on the stocks themselves, you have lights and then turn signals. And listen to the cutest little horn you've ever heard. It's so small, I love that. Up here on the gauge cluster, you've got two big gauges, your speedometer, and then of course your tachometer, and then you also have fuel and engine temperature. Now in terms of the driving controls, the steering is pretty heavy at low speeds. It is not power assisted. And you'll also notice that the gear shifter is really precise, surprisingly precise in fact. I have a 2016 Wrangler JK, and I actually think the manual transmission shifter itself is better in this than in the JK. The throws are shorter and more precise in this vehicle. Additionally, the brakes are really good because the truck only weighs 2,000 pounds, the clutch take-up is pretty normal, and yes, it is really slow, but the 5-speed manual transmission helps you maintain a little bit of momentum up the hills. Now across the dashboard you have the smallest heater controls you'll ever see, very delicate, very precise, but then you've got these really adjustable heater vents across the dash, so you can control exactly where that warm air is going. Air conditioning was an option. This one doesn't have it. Now the transfer case lever on the Suzuki is probably the smallest, the cutest, and actually the easiest I've ever used. First off, you have really detailed directions here on when to use four-wheel drive and how to engage it, but essentially you have 2 high, 4 high, neutral, and then 4 low. That's it. Simple as that. It always works, it always engages. It's a piece of cake. Of course, then you have to get out and lock the hubs, but that's easy to do as well. Okay, let's take a look at the rear seats. So to get to the rear seats, you pull this little lever, it scoots forward, and then there's a little spring mechanism under the seat you use, and the whole thing scoots forward. And once you're back here, wow! Even sitting behind myself, the rear seat legroom is impressive. Yes, the floor is high, so your knees are kind of in your face here, but actually, it's amazing how much room they were able to squeeze out of such a tiny package. Headroom's not that bad either. Well, there you have it, guys. A really cool and unconventional 4x4 made by a company that is now dead to US consumers. And that's a real shame because abroad, the new Jimny looks like an amazing little off-roader. If they could get it to pass safety and emission standards here in the United States, imagine how cool it would be to have this awesome little 4x4 back in the States. As always, guys, I'm Tommy with the Fastlane Car. Let me know what you think of our little Suzuki Samurai. We still need a name for this thing. What do you guys think it should be named? Let us know in the comments below. Next time, we're going to go ahead and take this off-road. We're going to put it through our performance testing and see how she does. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.